Brady Cook throws an interception, and Theo Weiss throws a touchdown pass. Let's overanalyze it all. Coming up right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso, and a fan so desperate for football action, he stayed for every snap of the black and gold game. And you know what? I want to tell you what I saw from Corey Batoon's defense yesterday afternoon, and also talk about Big Mo's big fall. It's great fall as well. First, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And speaking of betting, you know what? It was the great Wesley Snipes who once said, always bet on black. And indeed, the black team won yesterday in the black and gold game. Mercifully, they went for two there. The gold team, I should say, went for two there at the end of the game, as to not subject us to more tackle-free football into overtime. But I will say this. I thought one play kind of typified what you see from these intra-squad scrimmages, of course. Brady Cook throws up a pass in the air, single coverage, down the sidelines. Forgive me for not knowing the receiver's name off the top of my head, but I know who was in coverage. That was Missouri's newest cornerback, Toriano Pride. And honestly, that is, from an offensive perspective, that is the type of interception that I like to see in practice. And that's going to seem a little bit counterintuitive maybe at first. But when you've got single high safety in the middle of the field, number one, there was a one-on-one matchup to the outside there, press coverage by Toriano Pride. And, well, hey, let's take a shot. Let's see how this looks. Let's see how this receiver does in this one-on-one matchup. And by the way, Cook can always learn something from every single snap and throw as well. And by the way, the wind was pretty brutal yesterday. A beautiful day, but man, the wind was absolutely killing any type of passing game if you were heading toward the south end zone. And that's exactly what happened here on Cook's pass. The wind just absolutely kills it. Pride has good coverage the whole way, turns around, high points it, makes a play on the ball, and comes down with an interception. So I, for one, am choosing to be an optimist here and look at this as a positive. You could be a negative and go, oh no, Brady Cook threw a pick. He's a fraud. He's regressing. That's not how I'm choosing to look at this, folks. Again, he took a one-on-one shot into the teeth of a 25-mile-an-hour wind. You usually don't see those types of windy days in the fall in Columbia. Occasionally it happens, but as fans of Missouri baseball and softball are very aware, this time of year you can get some incredibly windy afternoons in particular. So it was just the absolute perfect storm, almost literally, of wind yesterday. So I'll give Cook that, and I'll also, but at the same time, to me, you know, obviously corner, one of the biggest question marks, perhaps. Just a lot of returning production needs to be replaced by Missouri this season. Let's put it that way. Obviously, Toriano Pride playing a good game, making an excellent interception here early. Hey, that's a good thing to see. That's an obvious positive for the defense. And again, from Cook's perspective, again, it's practice. Take a few deep shots. See what happens. Not the end of the world, especially into the teeth of a brutal wind that really none of the quarterbacks could handle into that south wind, except for, there was one exception, the great Theo Weiss. Yes, the Missouri receiver with the touchdown pass off the trick play to Mookie Cooper. Again, into the wind, one earlier. And by the way, that was not the only trick play that Missouri ran yesterday in the black and gold game. I believe there was an earlier jet sweep by Speedy Johnson where he threw it back to Brady Cook for a screen pass, very reminiscent of the pass back from Darius Outlaw to Brad Smith when Missouri in 2003 took down the Nebraska Cornhuskers for about a 50-yard touchdown or something like that, one of the more famous plays of the last 25 plus years or so of Missouri football. But anyway, I thought that was very intentional by the Tigers. I didn't think they were just screwing around there and trying to have a good time. Although, hey, let Theo Weiss, the senior, throw a pass for a touchdown to the other senior, Mookie Cooper. Hey, good for them. That was a fun play, but I thought that was put on film pretty obviously and intentionally by Kirby Moore and by Eli Drinkwitz. They're very aware that this game is being broadcast on the SEC network. So therefore, Missouri, a team that runs a lot of jet sweeps, a ton of jet sweep action, even when they don't hand that jet sweep guy the football. Well, guess what tends to slow down the backside of the defense in pursuing that jet sweep action? Well, if you're suddenly going to throw it back to Brady Cook the other way or throw it downfield, that type of deal, just gives the offense, or excuse me, gives the defense yet another thing to think about in terms of defending Missouri's offense. You're already worried about, okay, outside zone this way, jet sweep going the opposite way, play action you got to be concerned about. Of course, Luther Burden is out there running around, Theo Weiss getting downfield. Missouri just has a plethora of offensive weapons at their disposal right now, and especially year 2 of Kirby Moore, year 3 of Brady Cook as a starter, a veteran-laden group of wide receivers that makes Luther Burden look inexperienced, basically. I mean, I'm being a little sarcastic there. Just an excellent, excellent offense I think we should see from Missouri this season. So, hey, Brady Cook throws one interception on a one-on-one ball. Nothing to really worry about there. Although Theo Weiss, joking around, thinks he's part of the quarterback competition now. Seriously, though, great play, but I think really what Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore are trying to do there is slow down the opposition in terms of defending the end-arounds and jet sweeps. I don't really think it's any more complicated than that. And I mentioned Speedy Johnson earlier. Well, he was basically the number 1 receiver for the black team, and it was interesting to see him running a much more diverse route tree already this spring. That's something I've talked about this past fall quite a bit. This, hey, watch this Marquis Johnson. He's going to be even better next season once he starts learning more of the playbook, more of the route tree, all that good stuff. Well, I think all systems go so far based on what we saw from the black and gold game yesterday. I'm really excited to see that young man's career. I think at the very least this season, he's going to be your number 4 wide receiver for Missouri. And my goodness, if he's your 4, obviously you got Theo Weiss and Luther Burden and Mookie Cooper ahead of him on the depth chart right now. That's just a tremendous luxury there. You didn't even see Mekhi Miller, who's had some excellent plays on third down from the slot last year. I thought you got a good glimpse into the future on some of those other guys, though. I thought Daniel Blood had some moments. He was, I believe, the offensive MVP of the game. Joshua Manning from Lee Summit, he was a freshman last season, had some moments as well. You know, again, going to be really tough for any of those guys I just mentioned to get a whole lot of snaps come this fall on what should be a top 10 national Missouri type defense. But hey, we got a pretty good glimpse into the future there at the wide receiver position at the very least. And you know what I do want to talk about, we've gone all offense so far here in the first segment. Got to talk about the defense coming up here in just a little bit. And the Joker is real. There is no doubt about that. That's one takeaway I have from Missouri's defense yesterday in the black and gold games. Let's talk more about Corey Batoon's defense here in just a little bit. But first, let's talk about Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply, and now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024 validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC is a registered broker-dealer. And you know what? My favorite way to watch movies is on Amazon Prime via the Fire TV. Well, Fire TV is also your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis, whether we're talking about opening day for MLB or March Madness. You're going to want to have a Fire TV, right? Fire TV also recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. Again, NBA, March Madness, MLB, lots more. And not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos. Yeah, you got to check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit Amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. The Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown Show will be available tomorrow on the Locked On College Basketball feed. Experts Andy Patton and Isaac Shade will break down their brackets and discuss everything you need to know about filling out a winning bracket and prepping for this year's NCAA tournament. Find the Locked On Bracket Breakdown now on the Locked On College Basketball podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And before we get to the Missouri defense, actually, just a quick word on some of the other Missouri quarterbacks. First of all, it was hard not to feel a little bit bad for Sam Horn yesterday as you saw him with that large contraption brace on his right arm as he's going back and forth between the two sidelines, sort of getting the mental game work in, I suppose, being in on the headsets, that type of deal. Just felt bad for that kid. You know, I'm sure he'll be okay eventually. Hopefully he'll make some decent money, either in baseball, football, something like that. But obviously, he's got a lot of rehab ahead of him here. And this the start to his Missouri career is obviously not gone how he or anybody else would have hoped at this point. So, frankly, I would just be thrilled. I think it'd be a heck of a story, really, at this point. If Sam Horn were to somehow get healthy in 2025 and maybe just kill it as the Missouri starter. Let's not completely write that off, by the way. The guy has had no experience whatsoever. That's the part that's a little worrisome at this point. If you're a fan of Mizzou football in particular, that part is worrisome. The fact that he's had basically no experience at this point in his career. But some guys obviously did get some experience at the position yesterday. Brett Brown got the start alongside Brady Cook for the opposition, and I thought Brett Brown had some moments. I thought the walk-on really was fairly impressive. Again, considering that walk-on status, The rest of the Missouri quarterbacks, well, for example, Aiden Glover, the true freshman, Tommy Locke, the walk-on, also Daniel Blood's brother, another walk-on who got some action as well. Quite honestly, they all looked like walk-ons and true freshmen who were throwing into 25-mile-an-hour winds. That's basically what it looked like. A brutal day, honestly, for passing at Faurot Field. So I don't want to overanalyze any of that, especially, again, when somebody like Aiden Glover was playing high school football, about 5-6 months ago or something like that. So let's not overanalyze any of that. A tough game before any type of passing game to get going. Again, with Brady Cook, you saw him probably run a lot more than you would have expected, maybe because of all that wind. But to me, Brady Cook looked like Brady Cook. That's basically my takeaway there. Now, defensively on that side of the ball, for the most part, Corey Batoon's base defense didn't look terribly different than Blake Baker's for the most part, did it? Now, maybe Batoon played a little bit more too high safety than Baker would have. I don't know. That's hard to say. Again, it's the black and gold game. We're not going to overanalyze the usages here. But I will say this, when Missouri went with trips offensively, when they would have 3 receivers to one side of the field, I did like one thing about it is they would always go aggressive on that. There would be a man on all 3 receivers. A lot of times what you'll see is against trips, against 2 high safeties, well, one of those safeties will be lined up against the guy who's the farthest inside receiver to the slot. Well, basically what I'm trying to say, they give 10 yards of cushion there, something like that, against the 2 high look. Well, every time the Missouri offense went, from what I could see, they would go trips to one side. Corey Batoon was not giving you that free bubble yardage, that free slant yardage, anything like that. It was an aggressive single high look. I frankly enjoyed that. It always frustrates me when I see a lot of college defenses giving up that type of yardage unnecessarily. Again, especially in a type of game where passing yardage was going to be difficult to come by. But really, other than that, I thought it's not as though Missouri came out in a 3-3-5 or something like that, unless you technically want to call the Joker a linebacker. Now, what is the Joker? I've explained this a little bit, what that was probably going to look like, but it was definitely basically what I was talking about. Instead of Johnny Walker, for instance, he was the player I was seeing play the Joker spot the most defensively, especially when it was mostly the first and second teams there in the first half. Well, Johnny Walker was definitely standing up. He was in a 2-point stance, no hand in the ground, anything like that. But his depth, where he was actually lining up on the field, he was basically a defensive end. There's really nothing different there. Is he a linebacker? He has maybe a couple more coverage responsibilities. Maybe he needs to play the back out of the backfield in certain instances. But for the most part, the only real difference is in an obvious passing situation, say it was 3rd and 8, something like that. Well, then suddenly Walker was lining up very, very wide in a technique sometimes called the wide 9 these days, meaning you're just lined up outside of the tight end even, but even wider than that. So you saw a very large gap between Walker and the tackle that was ostensibly next to him, but really there was sometimes a massive, massive gap between those 2 players defensively. So just a little bit of a different look there from that edge guy, the field side edge guy for the most part. But other than that, there wasn't anything terribly radically different looking about Corey Batoon's defense versus Blake Baker's last season. Easy for me to say. And coming up after yesterday's kicking contest, hopefully we do not have a Finkel and or Einhorn situation on our hands, plus Big Mo's oh no. But first, this week's March Madness bracket highlight is brought to you by our friends at Nissan. Each week, we're picking one team that stands out, a team that's pushed it further than the rest. Just like any of the all-new 2024 Nissan SUVs, these guys were able to take it to the next level. And the Tennessee Vols can only be described as a Pathfinder. They've been thrilling to watch and have really created a lane for themselves after claiming the top spot in the SEC. Player of the Year candidate Dalton Connect has carried the Volunteers all season and made them a team to watch in March. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. I'll admit I have not checked the Power Mizzou message board post-game after the black and gold game just yet, but I have to assume the usual crazies are arguing about Blake Craig right now. Oh, there's got to be somebody out there who's going, damn it, Blake Craig, sure, the new Missouri place kicker, the leader in the clubhouse for that position. Sure, he's looked good in practice, reportedly, but when the pressure was on in that timeout yesterday in the first half, the student kicking contest, well, Craig choked. He missed the kick, darn it. Well, here's the thing. I'm choosing to blame the student holder. That's my thing. I think that person is the Finkel and or Einhorn of this situation. Laces out, Dan. Laces out. But seriously, let's not worry about Blake Craig at this point. Again, the heavy wind, hey, they were kicking with the wind. It wasn't exactly the easiest kicking situation either. And again, seriously, there was a student who was holding the ball. Not exactly an ideal scenario there. But speaking of wind that made things less than an ideal scenario, I was sitting over by Big Mo on the North Concourse during the game. Fortunately, my friend Blake and my youngest daughter Olivia were not standing directly behind the Big Mo drum as they were several minutes earlier when the drum actually tipped over out of its stand because the wind was so incredibly strong. It actually tipped the thing out of the drum. So my goodness, I understand that a huge bass drum, you don't want to strap that thing down, right? Because then it doesn't make the noise. It doesn't have the proper vibrations. But hey, maybe between the ceremonial knocking of the drum, if it's 30-mile-an-hour winds or something, I don't know. We got to figure something out because seriously, somebody could have been seriously hurt there if they were standing behind the drum as many people were throughout the game. So fortunately, nobody was hurt. Obviously, the people who are in charge of the drum were shocked when that happened. Obviously, that type of thing had never happened before. So fortunately, nobody got hurt there. Maybe something we can maybe learn there in the future. That's all I'll say about that. But otherwise, it seemed like the fan experience was really good from the black and gold game. I thought it was a solid crowd. I have no idea how many people were there. If I had to guess, maybe 12,000 or something like that, which seemed like a pretty good number to me. I didn't know how many people to expect, but from what I could tell, my buddy Jake brought his son and his nephew to the game and stayed for autographs afterwards. And he said they basically had the time of their life getting to meet Luther Burden and Theo Weiss and get some autographs and all that good stuff. So seemed like a successful black and gold game overall. And while certainly I would have liked to have seen some live tackling in the game, you know, the more you think about it, it is still spring football, folks. We are 6 months away from real football here, as much as occasionally I think, hey, we need to still learn how to tackle here in preseason, because sometimes in September football, the tackling in particular is not quite up to snuff. It's a real delicate line you've got to balance there for everybody in modern football with everything we know about, you know, concussion prevention and all that kind of stuff. You don't want guys just bashing each other in the heads in two-a-days anymore. I think we can all agree with that. At the same time, you still have to tackle. You still got to put your face into the dirt every once in a while, and there is a delicate balance to be reached there. At the same time, the more I thought about it, it is just spring football. We're so far from actual tackling and actual live football at this point. You know, we do want to prevent injuries, especially at this point. And Missouri came out of that game yesterday. Nobody seemed any worse for the wear, so that's a positive thing. Luther Burden didn't play a whole lot yesterday. They're managing his reps, apparently, for whatever reason. I don't know. Again, according to people after the game, he was jumping around and having a good time, so he seems perfectly fine as well. good to see. By the way, Burden, again, had a big smile on his face after the game, all that good stuff. Seems like he's good with the kids and all that stuff. So that's fun to see, and good for him for kind of taking that mantle a little bit in his third year in the program as kind of a guy who leads off the field a little bit as well, it sounds like. So good on everybody with Mizzou. Sounds like everything went off well. Let's just make sure Big Mo stays in place on a nice windy day next time. Other than that, a good day for everybody involved. And again, fortunately, nobody was hurt. No big deal. Just saying, well, let's try to prevent something else next time. And you know what? Actually, it sounds like I'm wrapping up the show, but actually I got a couple more notes for you here as we wrap up. Corey Sims sounds like Missouri and Tennessee. This is according to Adam Gorney over at Rivals.com. A couple of recruiting updates for you here real quick. Missouri and Tennessee had been the two early front runners for this young man, but you know what? The Vols are slipping a little bit. USC, Georgia, Nebraska, Penn State now jumping in, but it seems like the Tigers are feeling pretty good about their spot here for, again, a 4-star player from Christian Brothers in St. Louis. Corey Sims could be a Tiger here before too long. You never know. And by the way, another update on Dylan Alfred, the Saraland, Alabama player. Tigers remaining the team to beat according to him as well. May 17th going to be his commitment date. Others considering he's obviously considering others, but at this point, the only official visit he has set up is Missouri, and that's actually after his commitment date. Again, seems like to me the Tigers are a really strong leader in the clubhouse there. So Dylan Alfred could be a Tiger come May. We'll just have to wait and see. But thanks, as always, for listening to Locked On Mizzou. Hope you're having a good Sunday, and until Monday, I'll see you all then right here on Locked On Mizzou.